You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we will show you how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus your life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll pull back the curtain so you can implement these tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Simonillo. Welcome to episode 29 of the Reinvest Podcast, where Seth and I get to show you how to maximize your life through the power of real estate investing. At the point that this will be dropped here, we would have had our investor meetup already last night. But there's some really awesome networks going on out there. So I would encourage you guys, whatever market you're in, find a meetup if you're not going to one now. We had a great time, brought in some local government to talk about local laws related to real estate. And Seth, it's important to know what's going on.
It made me more excited about what's happening in our city and some of the plans that they already have that are moving forward, just to help revitalize our downtown and revitalize Lima. So it was some really good stuff. Definitely you guys need to get plugged in whatever city you're at to a local RIA or investor meetup and start networking and connecting with the movers and shakers in your community.
Well, anytime you're trying to solve someone else's problem, you're going to get way more assistance and help. So, it was good to hear the mayor talk about what plans they have for the city and how we can actually come alongside of them. Because I think sometimes the perception as an investor is that you kind of look down upon local government and that your interests are not aligned with them. But I think we have an administration here in Lima, at least, that seems to want to work with investors. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But hey, we've got an exciting guest here today, Victor Bell, longtime real estate guy, predating a lot of the syndicators that you see in the market here today, and would love to focus in today on how to survive a financial crisis, the story of an investor who's been investing since the mid-90s, which was about when I was born. So not to make you feel old, Victor, but
no, I'm good. Nice and young.
Yeah, looking at, you'll see the video on this. Victor, you were telling us before we started here that you are an MMA guy, former military. Get into your background a little bit.
Ooh, wow. So, MMA guy. I started off back before it was MMA. It was NHB. I guess we didn't really have a name for it at the time. Former military. I was in for a few years. I was in for 4 years. I was an infantry guy. I rucked and shoot. That's kind of what my job was. So that was fun. Pretty much at work. Basically, we worked out all the time.
Right.
So that's that. But when I got out of the military, kind of spilling into how I got into real estate, I got out of the military, dropped out of college after the first semester. They were like, hey, if you come back, you're going to owe us money. And I was like, oh, wow, I thought this was free. But it's not. So, and then I got in trouble, when I got out. I ran out of money and I kind of started hustling, and I got on probation. I got a felony charge. And while I was on probation, I had to go get a job. So while I was on that job, I started realizing that everyone that had been there for 10 years hated that job. And, naturally, that was kind of the tipping point for me to realize, hey, these guys have been there for 10 years. They hate it. I'm new. I'm not actually enjoying it that well. I burned my prior bridges. College, burnt, military, burnt. So now it's like, all right, what do I do? On the way home driving, because I work nights, I was driving and ran off the side of the road. I fell asleep while I was driving. And the next day I woke up and had to kind of wake up and do it all over again. So I went to a bookstore and I sat on the floor. I was looking at all the business books and I was like, okay, I have to do something. And there was like a real estate book there, Fast Cash with Real Estate by Ron LeGrand. And I grabbed that book and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And that first year I did $1.2 million in real estate deals. I found a partner, got money from him, credit partner, and he made a bunch of introductions, and I never looked back. So that's kind of my background, kind of really condensed. There's a bunch of other stuff, either like even prior to that, but that's also how I got into MMA and stuff. Got out of the military, kind of an angry guy. Like, what do I got to do? So, MMA was taking off. It was fun.
So I want to slow down and go through a couple of the things that you said.
Yeah.
So first of all, is it Ronley or Rodney Graham?
Ron LeGrand, also an older guy.
He was like one of the OG dudes with like Carlton Sheets, kind of the original real estate investor guys, doing the infomercials and stuff. I'm pretty sure one of our investors actively was a part of his program for a long time, and also that was a huge pivotal moment for them. But you kind of had to hit rock bottom in order to get some clarity on where you wanted to go with your life. And why real estate? I mean, you just the book that you saw at the bookstore, you kind of heard about it prior to that.
Yeah, like I said, I had kind of been hustling, selling, really honestly, the truth is selling weed at the time, so like when I got, dropped out of college and I started doing that, naturally we all watch TV. And this was, like before internet, cell phones, a bunch of other extra stuff that was going on.
Right.
It's watching those infomercials at night, because I was up at night. And I remember watching this one and it was like, what if you were watching this and then 2 years later you still did nothing? And that's kind of around the time frame it was. So I was like, all right, now I'm in trouble. Now I'm looking around in my life and it's not getting better. What am I going to do? So naturally, when I went to the book, I had done other little businesses here and there, lawn services, a bunch of stuff. I left home when I was a kid. I left my mom's house when I was about 12 and a half, and my dad, when I was about 14. So I've been on my own for a really long time. Even high school, kicked out a bunch of stuff. I like a crazy backdrop story. So with the businesses, side hustles, all that other stuff, real estate was like a last hurrah. Unlike other people who at the time, they're like, hey, we got a job, we're going to college, and I wasn't like some major like thug troublemaker. I was really just trying to find my way in the world, really.
Right. But obviously you weren't a bum though, because once you got some direction, I mean, to do 1.2 million in real estate your first year, you obviously had some skill sets and some work ethic there when you made that jump.
Well, ironically, yeah, and thanks for sharing that too, because like how I found my partner. So I literally got that book. I went to work. I put the book next to the phone, and then I cold called all the. I took the script and cold called all the numbers out of the newspaper that were for sale by owners. So I literally just, because I didn't know what I was doing, I just read what the script said to say, and then I called, and I finally got someone to say yes.
That's wild.
So yeah. So then the next phone calls, in the book to make was like, because the guy was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, oh man, I don't have that money. Like, I don't know what to do. So
crap, I got something under contract. Now what?
Yeah. So it's like, all right, chapter 4. So the book said to call like hard money lenders and mortgage companies and stuff like that and see if they had like REO departments, like stupid stuff. So I was just like Hail Mary passes. And I called all the numbers in the phone book that I could that were mortgage companies, like in Austin, Texas, because I was in Texas at the time. And I went from the A's to the S's before I got anyone who would even take my phone call.
Whoa.
And, so and to your point, the guy's name was Bob and Jamie. They actually owned the mortgage company at the time. And Bob was like, how'd you even get this number? And I told him, I was like, I cold called the phone book. And he was like, wow, really? And he was like, you don't know what you're doing, do you? And I was like, not at all. And he was like, why don't you come into my office? So it turns out, to your point, they were actually a part of their like Ron's education thing. They were kind of what I like to call the traveling circus of people going around and selling real estate information at the time.
Right.
So that's really how I got to go into their office and hear, because they did mortgages and buying notes. So I learned creative financing through that office, that experience.
Wow. So you contacted a mortgage broker off of a cold call list looking for prospective sellers.
The actual phone book, yes, that was this thick, which was Austin, Texas.
And you just happened to get a guy who was a mortgage broker, and he said, hey, here's what you're doing, and he took you under his wing.
Yeah, it was to your point. Like, he was impressed that I made it that far, because like that phone book's, from when mortgage companies at the time, that there wasn't Google and a bunch of other stuff.
Right. Or like skip tracing or anything like that. I mean, it's just, here's what it is. You start, just hustling and grinding on it. I think what's interesting, I had a buddy who was applying for a job, and in order for him to apply, just to get an option to apply for a position, he had to go through like 4 months worth of intense schooling to get his licensure, just to have an opportunity to get a job. And he was competing with maybe a dozen other guys, with no guarantee that it was going to turn into that.
Right.
Ended up getting the job. It was insurance. And I asked him one time, I was like, hey, why did you go through 4 months worth of schooling with no prospect or no guarantee that it was going to turn into something on the other end? And he's like, listen, man, I just knew if I was going to go through the steps to do this, it was going to turn into something.
Yeah.
So I think so many times people get hung up. They're like, well, if I don't know if this is going to turn out well for me, then I'm not going to start it. But it's like, dude, you start getting movement in your life and some action in your life, Yeah, it might be a pivot that you didn't understand, but movement creates opportunity. And you just started moving by calling these phone numbers. Boom, you get a mortgage broker. Hey, come into our office. You're young, you're aggressive. We can help you. And off you went.
Yeah. 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 And
Wow.
then that was my pitch too. I was like, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing, but if you show me, if you teach me what to do, you'll think you did it later because I'm just going to do what you say. I'm not going to, I'm going to as is it. And I was like, I'll wipe coffee stains off your desk. I'll cut your yard. I'll do whatever it takes. And he was like, nah, you don't have to do that. And, truth be told, I don't cut my own yard to this day. Like, I hate cutting grass. So, but I offer those things, because, to your point, I have a very, a realistic understanding of what it takes to succeed. I have that, at a really young age. Like I said, I left really young. So I have a very heavy, survival mechanism that I know like if I stop moving, things won't work, because I watch people kind of question that. And I'm like, yeah, man, like, and it's not a, holier than thou, you got to want it. Like it's a realistic thing to your point. When people know that they can get momentum, they know something's going to happen, especially in these type of businesses.
Yeah, that's great, man. And we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but sorry, I just threw the ball there.
No, yeah, you're good. So why don't you'd mentioned to us before that you really started cutting your teeth on bigger deals in real estate and really starting to understand some of the higher end markets when you were in Hawaii.
Yes.
So why don't you go back to there? How did you get your start in Hawaii in real estate? Because you said you started in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, I lived in Killeen, but I worked in Austin, so I was driving back and forth. So yeah, so when I got out of the military, went back home to Texas. That was where I left from. And then I met my wife later, and then she was in the military, and we got stationed back in Hawaii. And I don't know if you guys have ever said it yet, but you know how like you look at your life, you go, look, if I knew then what I know now, I would do it different. Yeah. So that was me. I got the opportunity to go back to Hawaii, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to crush it because I knew how to do real estate. But again, when I got there, it was like I was looking at properties at the time in Texas that were like 50 grand, 60 grand. And now I bang Hawaii and it's like 300,000, 500,000. And you're like, oh man, like, so the numbers were crazy. So, in that first package of properties I bought in Texas, they were like, it was one house and a bunch of like duplexes, fourplexes, an 8-unit, 12-unit, 10 units, 16 units. So I was starting to get an understanding, but I had no formal training whatsoever on multifamily. So when I get to Hawaii, I was doing residential too, because I still like buy small houses for my own personal, right? But I started looking at multifamily, and I did what everyone else does. They're like, the numbers are too big. The numbers don't work. As I started getting some formal training, and then I would be in Hawaii, I would buy houses, make money. Then I would take that money to like Ohio and Texas and Arizona and all these other places, but I didn't live there because I didn't really get it. And we'll probably get into this later in the show, but I took down a deal in Ohio and it tanked big time.
Where was it in Ohio?
Cincinnati.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like PTSD for that. But
he's like, nothing against you, but your state sucks.
No, love Ohio. One of my buddies who actually is an educator, his name's Scott Shield. I talked to him because we're friends, and he was like, "Don't do it." And he has tons of properties in Ohio, right? Because he's in Cleveland, and he's like, you don't understand the market. But what I was doing was what every other investor did. They were like, "Oh, go to these emerging markets," but I didn't get emerging market tends to mean cheap market. Emerging means there's jobs moving there, and a lot of times employers look at a market because it's a cheaper standard of living for new people coming in. They can get warehouses, industrial stuff, office space for really cheap, a lot of vacancies. So they can move operations into a place that has less cost. Mm-hmm. Right. So a lot of real estate investors don't really get that. They're going, "Oh, it's an emerging market." It means like it's going to do better later. But do you have the capital to wait until it does better later? Because that could take 5-10 years. Right.
Yep.
So to your point, it wasn't until that deal tanked, which I can go into in depth if you really have, coffee and want to keep your feet on the desk. But
we'll save that for our smaller pockets segment then.
Yeah, there we go. But my buddy that's a broker owned a bunch of deals, and he's like, "First off, Vic, you're doing it wrong." And I was like, "Okay, I'm listening," because I was having success prior to that. It wasn't like I was losing the game. And he was like, "If you're going to deal in this market with cap rates that are 4%, that's not going away, with you're thinking we're not making money, you're underwriting your deals way too conservative, like for this market, because that lets people know that if you're playing this game, when buy high, sell higher markets, that you don't really know what you're doing.
Mm.
And to my initial thing, just like when I met my first partners, I was like, I'm listening.
Right.
And he showed me what to do. And he was like, look, you know what? Everyone else is playing a cash flow game. In those other markets, they have to have cash flow, because if they get trapped there, they're stuck there. They got to have money to keep them out. And
Yep.
our markets, when we have these low cap rate markets and we know where rents are going to continue to go up, we underwrite based on these lower cap rates, but we know within 2-3 years, we're going to be able to yank out these big bumps that you would normally not be able to get from other markets. Right. So, because
Right.
I'm like, how are these guys making money? I'm sure you guys see it too, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So you're like, no way these guys are cash flowing. And, but what it is they're like, yeah, we know we got to put down 35-40% on our deals, but we know in 36 months, 24 months, we're going to go in, raise rents. We're going to yank out our money and we're going to leapfrog into another deal. That's a non-taxable event. And we're going to stockpile. We're not selling.
Man. Dude,
And
I'm
they were
telling you,
like,
that strategy though, like,
uh-huh.
because we're in the Midwest, we're in Northwest Ohio, right? That's where
Nice.
we're based out of. So we underwrite for cash flow. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
we'll see pro formas come across our desk and it's all in speculation, or it's like no cash flow, but hey, we think if rents go, next 8% in the next 2 years, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
freaks me out.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't know that, because, like after, I started going to seminars, and I used to be a coach for Dave Lindahl and the Apartment House Riches, because I was a student later, and then they made me a coach. So I started coaching students. And that was where, just to your point, like, yeah, if you look in those markets, you have to underwrite, 50%, for your expenses. You got to get the debt, you got to get your DSCR, your debt service coverage ratios at 1.2, 1.5, 1.7. It hopes to get it to this number, but it has to cash flow big, to your point, because you're a cash flow market.
Right.
As opposed to these other markets. Yes, you still have the cash flow. Don't get it wrong. You got to cover the debt. But
Right.
you're starting to look like, hey, we're going to exit at a 4.5 cap. We bought at a 4.5 cap just for limited product. We're going to get this big bang on the out. And if you pull out $2-3 million and you bang another property, that's where your money comes from. It's these big windfalls. Cash flow is, that's what my buddy said. He's like, cash flow is not for you guys. That's to pay your investors, pay your debt. You are focusing on the forced appreciation that comes from the velocity of a market like this. And it's crazy because it's counterintuitive.
Right. It is. And, I think this is a good segue into, one of our big topics for today that we're hoping you can really unfold for us is, how do you survive in a financial crisis? And there's a lot of noise surrounding some of the economic uncertainty that we're headed into. So, the whole cash flow versus appreciation and trying to forecast, will we see rent growth like we have? And is it more regionalized to certain markets? So how should investors prepare for what's ahead? Both, kind of get their house in order, but also to capitalize on opportunity.
I've been saying this a little bit, and I've been fortunate enough to be a guy that kind of, me and my wife talk about all the time. The wave crashes on us first. Like if you picture surfing, we're out getting wiped out and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden we have to paddle back. And then we're like, dude, that sucked. And then we look out and everyone else is getting packed. So we're kind of in front of the curve, right? So to answer that question, I think it's better for most investors right now. If you're going to survive any type of financial crisis, one, you need to look long-term now. This is not going to be this is my opinion. Like, look long-term. Go for a better class of asset, which means you're going to have to invest with other syndicators, invest with other partners, either get into a fund, start your own fund, and get into that space where you're going to have to shift a little bit. And you're going to have, I don't know if I said it a second ago, but you're going to have to raise the bar on the level of asset class that you get, right? Because if you look backwards, what just happened, the days of easy money is gone. Right. A lot of people refinance their properties, fix those all up, and they refinanced already deals that already value add. So now they're looking at long-term holds. So if you're going to get a deal, you're going to have to get a better deal now, which means you're going to have less cash flow. You're going to need more money down, and you're going to have to think long-term. Hey, what is this going to look like in 5 to 10 years? That's really the play.
How are you educating your LPs or prospective investors on the mindset shift that they have to have? Because, Seth and I are both full-time real estate agents and investors. Oh, okay. So on the agent side of things, we have to manage seller expectations. well,
Yes.
hey, I need to get X out of my house because 6 months ago, or, Susie next door got this for her house, and they don't understand the dynamics of rising interest rates.
They don't understand interest rates have gone from 3% for consumer loan to 6.5%, 7%. So I mean, how is that working out in your guys' underwriting now that since interest rates have been so volatile the last 8 months, and you guys are still full steam ahead, and you said you're still working on raising capital for a fund.
Yeah.
How are you guys forecasting that? And like what Garrett said, getting maybe the expectations for your investors in line with.
Well, yeah, and that's a great question. So what I do is just what you guys are talking about. We have to educate our investors. Sometimes we have to, I've had investors that I'm like, hey, we used to do deals together. You need a 6-7% return, and that's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what you need to be excited about is a 4% return with the upside coming around later, and just kind of get that wrapped around your head, because we're at a different market. That'll come again. But even to your point, it's a lot of re-education. Even that's why we started a fund, or I started a fund, because it's my fund. So I had to go back and kind of smash the glass on a lot of my investors and go, hey guys, I don't know where you're getting these numbers from, but that is gone. Right. As a matter of fact, what I had to kind of do is offer up some proof. Is start showing them, hey, look, let me show you some syndication scenarios where the syndicators actually promise their investors 8% pref. And now that syndicator is forced to go look at new deals because they are making no money.
Yeah, and the only way they can fund the machine is by acquiring more properties.
Right. And that means that their attention is now not on your investment. They have to do this thing. Things are slow. Costs are up. Operational costs are up to be able to get it done. So will they do it? Yeah. Is it going to come at a cost to them? Yes. And do you want somebody now not paying attention because the noose is so tight around their neck? You're forcing them to steal two things: time and now money, which is they got to go someplace else. Mm-hmm. They got to look at another deal. So, I try to explain to people that I'm like, when you strangle somebody and they can't feed themselves, they have to do something. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my investors get it. They're like, you know what, you're right. We see that that's an issue, because if you promise somebody that, hey, you're going to get this and we make nothing until you get it. Yeah, that made sense when the rates were at 3, but now they're at 7, and that won't last long. I don't think this will last any longer than maybe another 18 months, but to your point, as it relates to being a multifamily investor, it does affect costs. It affects time. It affects, properties coming to market. So to your point, we have to educate our guys a lot. Mm-hmm. Even on our pref return we initially started off with our fund with a pref return, and we started doing investor briefings and had those questions. And I was like, I'm so tired of answering that question. We went back, amended our fund, and we took away a pref return. Mm-hmm. And we adjusted the amount of, for our LPs, we went from like 70 to 70-30. We went 70-30 to 80-20, 80% to our investors and 20% to us. But we dropped the pref return altogether.
So you gave them more upside, but didn't stand on that pref return just to be able to have a little more flexibility moving forward. Yeah. So that's one of the adjustments then that you've made kind of heading into a potential recession.
Yeah, just in general. I just think it's everyone's like, well, the equally yoked thing. I was like, now we're equally yoked. You get 80% of the first dollar made, we get 20% plus, we get 20% of the upside later. And, but all the other terms still are the same, right? Mm-hmm. So now I feel like we're both working equally, because prior to this, I didn't have a fund. I had my partners and business friends and things that I would do stuff. I did 100% of the work anyways. Yeah. Right. Without anything. And I was fine for that. But when it starts to get to the part to where, now naturally we get regulated, we're doing all those things. I wanted to show people like, hey, look, I'm 100% on your team, but I want to make sure that our investor pool that we have that trust us, they know that I'm working for them. We're actually equally yoked, as opposed to the other way. We're hamstrung over here, making sure you guys get paid. And if things go sideways, we get nothing. And if you want a partner that you're willing to kind of say, hey, screw you guys, we don't care whether you make any money at all, but we're supposed to be limited partners and you're the general partner. Like, we don't want investors like that long term, because right. I have a big goal, right? Like I want to eventually get there, as a company. And I have to have people on my team that also want us to succeed, because we're really working for our investors and working on their behalf.
Well, and they should want you to succeed because you're the one taking care of their asset. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, rising tides bring all ships. Garrett says that about every other episode, but
it's true.
It's true because, if you're making money and you're succeeding, you're going to do a better job, and you're going to be focused on the property and making sure things are going in the right direction, and they're going to make more money. So, yeah, that's a great point.
I wanted to circle back around to get really practical for some of our active investors that listen.
Okay.
What would be some advice for you? Let's say that you're an investor today, got a portfolio, it could be a mixture of single family, multifamily, and you're concerned about what's coming and how to get your house in order. What would your advice be to somebody on how to kind of prepare for what's ahead?
Honestly, take a look at all of the assets that don't represent where you're going in the future. A lot of people hold on to some bad properties, bad locations, and stuff like that. If you can get rid of them, anything that can pull your portfolio down, get rid of it.
That's good. That's so maybe something that's underperforming. And okay, so on that sounds easy in theory, but we all know that emotional attachment and ego is a real thing. So how do you overcome maybe the sting or the ego of selling something at a net zero or even potentially a loss for the purpose of cutting that drag in the future?
If I'm honest, man, this is a business. Like I love everything. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. But at some point, I have to be realistic about my future, not my present. I'm like, all right, well, look, how long am I going to do this? And it's like, I'm married. I don't still have my ex-girlfriend call me because she's nice. You know what I mean? Like it's not about that. So at some point you have to look and go, okay, look, this is my future. This is where we're going. If I have an asset in my portfolio, no matter how much I had to work on it, will this thing bring me down in the future? And let's be realistic about it, right? Unemotional. And you just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this thing. And then I'm just going to keep the cream of the crop. And then I'm going to go get more of the cream of the crop and then go from there, because that has to be a future facing type scenario. Yeah. This is the time to be disciplined, but there's no time to not be disciplined. But I think we can get undisciplined when easy money's coming. But when you think a wave is coming, and let's say it doesn't come, aren't you still better off by getting rid of properties you probably held on that you shouldn't have? Because if you do that, we're all in real estate. Every banker wants to look at your portfolio or what type of deals, what's your business plan? Even for us, we're location players. We want really nice assets because this. And once you have like all these other properties, everyone looks at your portfolio and go, oh, what's this? We've had that property for a while. I was going to leave it to my kids. And they're going to like, okay. And it kind of shoots your story down. So, if you're going to build up to who you want to be in the future, and we all have to continue to accelerate and grow, then you start looking at what you have and go, what can I get rid of so it makes space for something new? So that's what I tell people. It takes some discipline, some honesty. But that whole thing, I have money and things like that is like, or not I have money, but I have these deals and I want to hold on to them. Sometimes you have to look and you have to recycle what's not going to help you get to where you want to go.
I think to your point of having vision, if you don't have vision on what you're after, you don't know if the assets that you have today are going to help you really get there.
Well, and you don't know where you're going.
Right. And like when I first started in real estate, I was like, okay, well, got to buy property. I didn't specify it like, hey, here's my buy box,
Right.
I want, 20 units to 60 units, multifamily, Class C that could be bumped into a Class B type thing. Didn't have that. I was just like, I'm trying to make money in real estate. And that's fine. You got to start somewhere. But you got to flesh that vision out to say, if I'm looking for a passive income in the next 10 years and I phase myself out of management intensive properties, then I probably shouldn't be holding on to short-term rentals that I self-manage. So just understanding that I think is a good point.
Yeah, no, man, that's a great response to that, because we get it all the time. People are like, oh, what do you do? And you go real estate. And I had a guy ask me the other day, it was like, hey, if I got a deal, would you, and we partnered on it, would you kind of manage it? And I was like, no, I don't do that. So, but if you have a bunch of properties that you self-manage on your own and they see that, and then the automatic response is, okay, well, he says this, but he does this, like why, so it kind of makes you feel double-minded. And to your point, someone has to grow up in this business. You can't be the same guy all throughout your career, so
just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did that look like for you going through the last recession and housing crisis, 08, 09, 010? Were you poised in a position where you were still buying, or were you kind of cutting down on your portfolio, repositioning tightening, the belt to get through, or what'd that look like for you?
I did exactly what I said. I have always, if I bought houses, I buy pretty houses. I always have, because I don't do renovations and all that other stuff. It's not my thing. And multifamilies, I stuck to a very specific, like naturally Hawaii, 2-story, walk up, hollow tile buildings, good locations where we knew we can raise rents. And I didn't have to worry about driving by my property and getting shot at. Right. So that's always been consistent, even across when I did stuff in Texas and other states and everything like that. So what I did do though, specifically, like anything that felt like we were really close on the wire towards if these people weren't here anymore, that's close. We got rid of those properties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we did. I'm not a person who likes a lot of pain. So
that's strange. You're an MMA guy, so
yeah, for sure. But what I have learned, I watch other people suffer, especially in real estate. I watch I don't do developments. I don't do renovation things where people are going down to the studs and tearing up roofs. My buddies do that. They build stuff. I'm like, man, I would really like my money next month. That scares me. So to that point, when I see other people go through that kind of pain, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to do that. Victor doesn't need to have that same shot in the arm to realize that shot hurts. Right. So to your point, I just watch. And because I'm nosy, I'm like, man, how'd you guys do that? And then I ask questions and they'll tell me. And I'm like, oh, and then, to your point, they do say, hey, this happened. We won't do that again. So I'm taking the we won't do that again. And I just apply it to my life now. I'm like, I'm
just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So is there still opportunity in multifamily, or is it just a saturated asset class because it's been so hyped and over-focused on?
No, I think, to my main, thesis of going to better properties. So going to better properties, there's never an overabundance of saturation. There's always a buyer and there's always a seller because, and I'm sure you guys probably see this in multifamily, the debt's 3, 5, 7, 10 years, maybe 12, things like that. So every part of that cycle, they got to refinance or sell. Mm-hmm. Period. Mm-hmm. So at some point, every 3, 5, 7 years, not 10 years, somebody's looking at their debt coming up around 6 months or so and saying, okay, cool. We're either gonna have have a rate adjustment that goes to market. And right now, if you were at 2.75, it's gonna bump to 6, 7, whatever, or if you didn't get a rate cap or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no oversaturation in better in the better quality of that asset. Right. So that's why we started our fund. Let's go bigger, let's go better, and let's focus on who our future buyers are going to be that aren't going to run out of money, that can take a 4 cap because their investors are like, hey, if we get 5, we're good.
Let me stir the pot here because there's an ongoing debate. Okay. So person A, side A is, hey, class A multifamily, though that demographic of tenant is less affected by recessions because of the discretionary income that they have, and they're not hit by the full impact of inflation the same as somebody who maybe is staying in a C-class property. Right. So you've got them being like, that's why I'm sold on, class A multifamily. I'll bleed and die that, till the end type thing. Then you've got people over here on the other side that are like, class C multifamily is a much more stable investment because what happens when there's job layoffs and tech layoffs and those people, it's easier to downgrade from an A to a B, and then people who are in a B class go to a C class because the belt tightens up. But nobody's ever downgrading into an A class. So you're kind of at the top of the market, and you hope that people are able to afford that. So what's your take on that? Are you kind of the class A guy, or do you see the class C model?
I'm more of a class B guy.
Oh,
I'm a class B plus, in B plus areas and locations, even for when we do small stuff. I have a house buying side too. All of our houses are pretty houses, gated communities, beachfront stuff, things like that. So, to your point, I totally agree with you. Class A is a different tenant. You have the same problems in a class A tenant as you do with a class C. Class A people, I'm a Class A person, right? We live beachfront properties, beachfront communities, and every time something was wrong, we were right there in the leasing office. Hey, this is wrong. It could be a light switch, and we're like, we pay way too much money to have this light out. Could you come fix it? So, the pool jets were out. Hey, what's going on with the pool? And it's the same thing
true.
with the Class C stuff, where it's like, if you need something fixed, that's a challenge. But to your point, I believe the Class B, because people will move up to a Class A, yes, but you're always going to have people in that Class B range because it's still affordable. It's still renters by choice. You don't have a lot of renters by necessity in Class B. And if it's affordable still, California, Hawaii, Washington, all these other kind of higher priced city. I mean, you're paying the same.
Yeah.
25, 27, $3,000 is still somewhat affordable to somebody that does have the amenities of the nice swimming pool, great locations. It's near all the great shopping and all the jobs and stuff like that around it, where you have a younger couple or a middle-aged couple or even some older couple who's like, look, I want a place where it's nice, it's secure, there's a pool, those things. So Class C, it's great for an investment standpoint. If you're just like, okay, cool. But if you're going to have a fund or you're a syndicator and you got to raise money anyways, why do that? Just get a better class of property and tell your investors, hey guys, we're looking for this in the long term. We're going to have to refinance in 3 to 5 years anyways. And if we're able to hit our targets for raising rent, we're going to pull your money out of the majority of it, give it back to you, keep the asset, and we'll have less cash flow, but you got your capital back and we can roll into something else nice.
Yeah.
But that's how you build a portfolio of Class B instead of Class C. And then you're stuck with Class B tenants. You're stuck with Class B management connections because a manager that they're different. And then you're also going to be stuck with Class B lenders because they're going to be like, well, or Class C lenders. Because if you go to a Class B lender, hey, what's your portfolio look like or what's your experience? Class C. Oh, so do you have any Class B experience? No. Well, you need someone on your team to do that.
Right. Yeah. That's good.
Right. So it's important to know those things because they do matter.
Yeah, no, that's good. We're going to jump into our smaller pockets segment.
Yeah.
So go ahead and tell us about one of your worst deals, and it could have been that Cincinnati deal that you were referencing earlier. And what did you learn from it? That's the important part.
Yeah. So the Cincinnati deal, I bought that property from Hawaii. I got a seller finance situation on that deal. I took it over. It was 50% occupied. It was a reposition deal. We were going to go in, do the parking lot, just renovate the units, fill it up, refinance $800,000 out of it. And I was going to dance into the sunset with a home run. It didn't work out like that. So, again, I didn't understand market cycles at the time, and I don't think anybody did. I just thought it was happening to me. So the project manager managed, and he also was a property manager. They went in, drained our accounts, fixed some of the units, rented them up when I was there, and then stripped the unit down after I left and brought the materials to some other place.
Whoa.
So,
say that again?
Yeah. So they fixed up units like cabinets and stuff like that. And then when we left, they would take that stuff out and move it to another site.
The property manager?
Yeah. Who was also our project
So they were
manager.
criminal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So you would come in to check up on the renovation progress. They'd show you the units and say, here's what we've done. You leave. They uninstall that and they take it to another property?
Yeah. Though nothing I own. They were doing that to about 70 other out-of-state owners at the time.
What?
No.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So I heard this just like 2 weeks ago was never let your property management company oversee a construction project. Don't let them tell you they can do it because they can't. But it's hard to protect against that kind of fraud.
Well, yeah, because, I was gone. I trusted them. I flew down they started off doing the work, and again, now that I look back, I'm like, the market crashed around on them. They were just struggling. They were trying to figure it out too. I'm not making light of it, but that's what probably was going on. Because no one steals if they have the money. That's just my opinion. Right. So, but that tanked us. We filed for bankruptcy. We went through bankruptcy for 12 months, like with the microscope up our butts. I fired my attorney because he was like, oh, you should borrow money because you have this other lawsuit going on. Because we had to get leasing equipment for like snow stuff. And I'm like, I'm from Hawaii. I didn't even know I needed snow equipment. Right. Just stuff you don't get. So I went through that. They kicked our case out because I didn't turn some paperwork in because the attorneys were like, oh, you got to turn in this document. And I was like, okay, fine. I turned it in and they were like, oh, you needed to turn it in 30 days, not 31 days. And I was like, well, I didn't know that. I'm not an attorney. So anyways, the judge kicked our case out and they were like, hey, Vic, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm reprimanding these guys. They know you're not an attorney and you can refile in 180 days. And I was like, sir, we've been doing this for 12 months. I haven't done anything wrong. right? This is a property situation. So after that, I got out of that and I went to work, which is what I could, because during that time I couldn't make any money. I was struggling, right?
Wow.
And I bought about $11 million worth of real estate within, really it was like over the course of that, really 90 days, I raised the money.
Mm-hmm.
But I started buying properties because now I was I was untouched. I was like, I'm going to make this happen. So that was my worst deal. My biggest lesson, and I think I've carried it on with me. It wasn't a fear thing, but it was that I didn't want to ever be in that situation again. So it was really about my own personal discipline. I got comfortable. I was winning prior to that deal. That actually forced me to do deals in Hawaii.
Wow.
Because I went to, I said, my buddy said, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, here's what's going on. I need cash flow.
So that's the real reason why you don't do big repositions anymore. You're like, let's just buy nicer stuff, not worry about it.
I know the cabinets are already there.
Yeah. And you know what? I broke that rule getting that deal. I don't want to do reposition deals halfway across the United States. I was like, how do I get a nice deal? But it was just what everybody else, I don't have the money. Like, well, none of us have the money. You go raise the money, you find the right deal and you make it work and you oversee what needs to be done. But there's a lot less overseeing to be done if you're overseeing a management company, managing something better, as opposed to, a vacant property in the hood that, you have to turn around and the people that live there don't want to be there either.
Right. Man, that's good. There's a lot. Please go back and listen to that last 5 minutes because that was, although painful, a lot of good lessons there.
Right? It's like,
I always love doing that segment with people because I don't enjoy watching someone else like go through pain, but I could see it on your face, just like going back to those moments. Because when you're in the middle of a fire, like you don't see an exit, it feels like the walls are closing in. You're not even sure how you're going to get out of it. But you did, boom, you went from that and raised $11 million. You're obviously on the other side of that story. But
the part missing from that story, unfortunately, is not real estate related, but realistically, it was needing to sit my wife down when she was pregnant with our twins and say, we don't have any more money.
Wow.
Now, we lived in a beachfront house. We're sitting on the back patio looking out at the ocean and in complete turmoil.
Wow.
My attorney, when I had my other attorney who was not representing me, she was representing me from a real estate perspective. She told me, she was like, Vic, don't bring Sharon back to court anymore. She burst into tears. She's pregnant. She makes you guys look bad. And I was like, okay, like that was the worst. And I promised my wife I would never put us through that again. Now, we've had ups and downs for real estate. I do real estate full time. So this isn't a sterile business.
Right.
But I was like, we will never go through that again.
Yeah.
So, and I'm a full responsibility person. So I was like, how can I be responsible? Never put myself in there, do that again.
Yeah.
That's so good. Wow. That's so good. All right, man. Next show segment here is what we call our little nugget. I'm a sucker for the air horn.
There you
I'm
go.
a
The
simple
air horn.
guy. What's one practical takeaway that, or piece of advice that our listeners can apply to their real estate investing business? Could be a life hack, tried and true principle you live by.
Well, there's two really. Like one, persistence, and second, discipline. Like right now is the time for persistence, but the second piece of that is be persistently disciplined. Because if you buy the wrong deal, that deal is going to last a really long time. So be persistent at getting the right deals right now and be disciplined enough to say, you know what, not that one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like waiting for somebody to invite you to prom when you want this girl or guy. You have to bite the bullet and be like, no, I got to be available for this one. I know what's going to happen.
That is an unfortunately relatable example for too many people.
Very much so.
That's good. Hey, man, what's been one of the greatest resources through your real estate investing career?
My greatest resources, honestly, man, it's going to sound funny, but I'm funny. Like my jokes have saved every real estate deal, sitting in a room with people way smarter than me, bankers and stuff. Like I understand people. I love people and I'm just myself. So I don't put people on a bigger pedestal. I feel like I'm important too. So when you can make people, I call it race to reel, whoever can race the reel the fastest in the room, typically people like that person. So I laugh and cuss and make jokes about, just like the relationship stuff. Like everyone's been through that. So that's probably my number one thing And it allows me to have met some really, really great business people that people see on TV and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, I like Victor. He's cool. But it isn't because of any other reason, but I'm funny.
Here's the real question. Does your wife think you're funny?
You know what? She really does. She's like, you know what? People
That's all that
love
matters.
you. Yeah. She's like, people will tell you all kinds of stuff. And I was like, cause I joke with people. And she's like, man, cause she's like, I'm not funny. You're funny. So we do have that. Yeah, she does. She thinks I'm funny.
That's good. When you can get your wife on board with your humor, then you're doing something right.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, this is a relationship business.
It is.
Everything we do. And I think that frustrates some people because like I'm doing the right things, but I don't get the same output or the same, response that maybe somebody else does. You could have everything, all your facts in a row and straight, but if you aren't in it for someone else's interest, if you're not taking an interest in their alignment and their goals, kind of that Zig Ziglar thing, help other people get what they want, and they'll help you get what you want, then you're going to be spinning your wheels. But
in closing, Victor has a book that he's written. So it's How to Create Wealth Through Investing in Apartment Buildings. So you can find that on Amazon. We'll put that stuff in the show notes. And then is there a website or that people can contact you at?
Yeah, they can go to bell-capital.com and they can schedule a call with myself or my team, or you can just, go to the investor portal. And that book, if you guys want a free copy of it, you can put that in there. It's bell-capital.com/book. And they'll get a free digital copy, and no harm, no foul. It's a great thing. And I would love to talk to people and answer any questions.
Yeah, and him and his company, they're actively raising for a fund right now. So, yeah, if they wanted to find out more about that, that would be through the phone call, through their website, and to hear more about what they're doing. And is that fund just, like you said, Class B, multifamily out in West Coast?
Yes, San Diego County right now, that's our target market, and Hawaii, naturally, if we get a big enough deal there. But it's an accredited-only fund. It's a $50 million fund, and it's only for multifamily. We're going to have a concentration of a bunch of different little deals in there. It's all $30 to $50 million size deals that we're targeting with that fund of $50 million, because we're going to get that.
Very cool.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, and we appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, man. If I had what you guys are doing now, I would have been way further along at the time. So thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome, dude. Thank you.
Cool.
As always, excited that you joined us on another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. If this episode added to your tool belt or left you feeling inspired, go ahead and share it with a friend. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to get in touch with us, go to our LinkedIn or Facebook profiles and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. See you next time.